Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, please do want to be a part of this family by subscribing and hitting the like button and also turning on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I post a new content. But if this isn't your first time, thank you guys for coming back. And if you're just a viewer that hasn't subscribed here, please do also subscribe because really appreciate it. So I'm going to be drafting out the basic patterns of the dress, and starting off I'll be putting the pictures, illustrations over there so you understand how these things are done and everything, because this video is quite essential and it is a much needed video but to serve as a guide to watch other videos. So my shoulder measurements is 15 inches, so I'll divide 15 inches by 2, which would give me 7.5 inches. So I'm going to start from this point. I'll mark my 7 inches over to that, my 7.5 inches. I'll mark it to that part. Now at this point where I marked my 7.5 inches, I'll come down by 1 inch, which is for my shoulder stance. And then I'll go in with my ruler and connect this line to the neck point. So I just connected that now, and then I'm going to show you my arm measurements. My arm measurement is 16 inches. 16 inches divided by 2 gives me an 8 inches. So from this point where I marked my shoulder stance, I'll come down by 8 inches. So to be sure I have the same 7.5 inches at this point around here, I'm still going to go ahead around here. I'm sure I have my 7.5 inches. And that's where my 8 inches is supposed to fall in, so I can see this. So I'll connect this line to this with a straight. I'm going to connect this 7.5 inches here because my armhole line is also going to be serving as my chest line. So I'll connect from here to here. So for me to get my armhole, I'm going to divide my armhole by, which is 8 inches. I'll divide it by 2, which gives me a 4 inches, and then after that is the midpoint. At that midpoint I'm going to do my curve. Okay, 8 inches and 4 inches is my midpoint. So now that I have my midpoint, I'm going to come in by half an inch, and then I'm going to connect this to meet this with a curve, and then I'll connect this as well to this. And this armhole line that I just drafted out is for the front. And I indicated that part with an F, which means front. So guys, I had to do a voiceover because the background noise was becoming too loud and I really need this to explain this well. So the next thing we'll be doing to indicate the parts which we just marked out, the line which I told you is my armhole line and is also going to serve as my chest line. So I'm just going to write AL for armhole and CL for chest line because they both serve as the same thing. So from that, my shoulder point, I'm going to go ahead and mark out my bust point, and I'll place a picture by the right side showing you all how to get your own measurements from your shoulder to your bust point. So I marked 11 inches, which is my bust point, and I connected it with a straight line. Mind you, we have not started applying the round measurements. We are just marking out where these round measurements are supposed to sit. And I indicated that as BP, which is for bust point. So I still went ahead from the shoulder measurements, and then I marked out my under bust measurements. So you place your tape from your shoulder to your under bust, just like the picture or the video you're seeing by the right side. And I marked mine, which is 14 inches, and then I connected it with a straight line across. And then I indicated that part as UB, which I'm going to correct that later, which is for the under bust. So from my shoulder, I'm going to find out my waist measurement or my half length measurement, which I normally use 17 inches for me. You can see the picture how I got it, but universally you can go down from your under bust measurement and come down by 3 inches. It works normally wherever you have your under bust. If you're not so sure, you can come down by 3 inches, which works perfectly for the waist measurements, which can also serve as the under bust measurement. So I went ahead and I marked mine, and then I marked it at the sides and I connected it with a straight line. So if you notice, guys, my voice is kind of back now and I'm so excited, and because I can actually scream now and I can do my voiceovers. So just in case you haven't noticed, my voice is much clearer now. So guys, I'm going to connect that line with a straight line now. And I'm going to indicate that part as HL, which is for half length, and W, which stands for the waistline. So the thing about that point is, the reason why I indicated dates like that is because you might want to be cutting out your blouse, and these basic bodice patterns is actually a perfect guide. It helps us a lot. So if you're cutting out your blouse, you might want to indicate that as half length, but if you're cutting a gown or something that has a joining, you can indicate it as waist, whichever one. I just put the two so we have a clear understanding of what's happening here. So the next thing I'm going to mark is my my hip measurement, which is 25 inches, and then I marked it by the side, and then I'll connect it to the straight line, and that is that for the hip, and I'll indicate HL for the hip line. And for the full length of this pattern, I went ahead and marked I used the full length of the pattern paper as my full length, and I wrote FL at that point, and we'll go over to marking our round measurements. So for the round measurements, I'll place a picture over there, either by the left side or the right side, showing you all how to get your round measurements. And whatever you have from your round measurements, you divide it by 4 and you mark it on the lines. Very important. So mine is 9.5 inches for my bust points, and I marked it at the bust point. That's for my bust measurements. So my under bust measurement is actually the same thing with my waist measurement or my half length measurement, which is 32 inches. For some people, their under bust measurement is smaller than their half length, and some people their waist measurement is smaller than their under bust. Most people don't even take the measurement, they just take their waist measurement and it works for them. But mine, I take the both measurements to be sure, because sometimes you might want to make a fitted dress and you don't want to be having some problems with the fittings around that area. So I took mine, which is actually equally the same thing, and then I marked it divided by 4. I'll place it over there on how to take both measurements. So for the hip measurements, I place the tape around my hip or around your bum bum, the biggest part of your lower body, which is like from your waist down, which is your bum bum area. That is the hip measurement. So I placed the tape around, and then I marked, and what I got from there divided by 4, and we're good to go. So now that I've marked out the whole round measurement, I'm going to go ahead with my ruler and connect everything with a straight line. So for the armhole line, I wouldn't connect a straight line directly from my bust point. I would like to go out a bit. So I marked that in a slanted form, and then I connected everything else. And I made sure that the points where I connected it was not too sharp. Please try and make yours a bit curvy if it's too sharp. So I connected all the lines, and then the same measurement I used for my hip measurement was the same measurement I used for my full length, and then I connected that down. I marked out the same thing at my full length, and then I connected that down, and we'll go ahead and apply our allowance, and that is everything for the front piece. So for my allowance, guys, I used half an inch for my sewing allowance. You can use 1 inch if you so wish, but I like to use half an inch because it doesn't stress me more. I know if I'm sewing on my sewing machine, the only thing I need to take out is half an inch, and it's just perfect. So I marked that at all the points, and then I connected it with straight lines, and then I cut out my pattern paper, and I was done with the front piece. So I know for the armhole measurements, you must have seen a lot of videos where they add sewing allowance to the armhole. Well, that is perfectly okay, but for me, over the years that I've been sewing, I don't add sewing allowance to my armhole measurements, and I think that has been perfect. It's been working really fine for me, and that is it. I just use my exact measurements around that region and it works perfectly. No allowances, but you can still go ahead and add your allowance to the armhole measurements. That is perfectly okay. It will work well for you, but for me I don't, and it's been going well. Now that we are done with the front pattern, this is what it looks like, and we're going to go ahead and cut out the back pattern now. So for the back piece, I know you've seen some red markers on the pattern paper. Those are actually the lines that were extended from the front piece, because I divided my pattern paper into two at the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is to mark out my zipper allowance, which I used 2 inches. Please don't forget to do this. This is very essential. This is very vital. Try as much as possible not to forget to mark out your 2 inches for your zipper allowance, and you mark that all down and connect it with a straight line. So guys, now that I've marked out my zipper, I indicated it as zip, and I'm going to go ahead and do everything else that we did for the front pattern, but at this point we'll be starting from the line where we marked the zip. So I'm going to go in by my 7.5 inches for my shoulder, and then I'll go ahead and mark my 1 inch for my shoulder slant, and I'll connect it with a straight line. So this is just basically a repetition of what we did for the front piece, but this time around there is a zipper allowance, and it's very, very important you keep this in mind. So from that point, I'll mark down my armhole measurements, which is 8 inches, and I'll connect a straight line. I'll connect a straight line, making sure I have the same 7.5 inches at that point. So for my armhole, which is 8 inches, I divided it by 2, which is 4 inches, and I connected it with the curve to the chest line or the armhole line. So I'm going to go ahead and mark out the other things just like I did mark out in the front piece. I marked out my bust point, I marked out my under bust, and I marked out my half length, which is also my waist, and I indicated it, and I went ahead and I marked out my hip measurements and connected it with a straight line. I indicated the full length of the pattern paper as my full length, and then I'm going to apply my measurements all around and connect it with a straight, not really a straight line, connect the lines together and apply my half-inch measurement. So the pattern paper was not enough. I sincerely apologize for that, but this is basically everything we did for the front piece, and then I'm going to indicate that this is the back, and then I'll cut out with my half-inch allowance. And this is everything, guys. Thank you all for watching my videos. Please stay tuned as we'll post on more videos. If you liked this, if you understood the pattern, if you have any question, please let me know in the comment section. Bye.